Hare Krishna. Thank you very much for that kind introduction. And I want to also thank all the youth of ISKCON of Round Rock for a wonderful, wonderful kirtan. Give them a round of applause. I was contemplating when the kirtan was going on that if it stops, then you all have to hear me, and which is not a very pleasing as chanting the names of Lord Hari. So welcome everyone to this very auspicious festival of Balaram Jayanti or Balaram Purnima, also the day of Raksha Bandhan, as Mataji said. And I feel very fortunate that I'm getting a chance to glorify Lord Balaram as per my capacity. For what I am going to speak today are a few pastimes of the Lord that I can share with you, some of the things that I have learned personally from senior devotees, acharyas in our Guru Parampara, and many of you here over the last many, many years. And it is said that on the festival days like this today, Lord incarnates in the form of the day itself. So whatever time is spent glorifying the Lord, it is actually spent associating with the Lord. So whatever time we have here together today, and we, not the speaker, but what we speak, the content, and the listener, who is hearing, is associating with the Lord personally as we are glorifying the Lord. So there's a very, very deep sentiment and a statement. I also want to thank, before I begin today, a lot of devotees who have been working very, very hard to prepare for not only this festival, but also Shri Krishna Janmashtami that is coming up next week. I know devotees have day jobs. You all have day jobs. You are here today on the Transcendental Thursday, as we like to call it, and spending the evening with us. But before I begin, I want to especially mention some of the names that I recall out of my memory, and if I miss any, please forgive me. There are many devotees who are here every night for last many, many days, weeks, trying to get our main temple hall ready for the Shri Krishna Janmashtami festival next week. Tejas Prabhu, Sakshi Gurang Prabhu, Gopabhav Prabhu, Rishikesh Prabhu, Maniti Prabhu, Kanai Gopal Prabhu, Darshan Mohan Prabhu, Tarachand Prabhu, and many, many Matajis who are also working behind the scenes every day to get ready. And this is my reflection on what is Krishna consciousness. It is just about us coming together and serving together, chanting together, hearing and taking prasad. These are all basic Krishna conscious principles. So today is Balaramji's birthday, and next week we will celebrate Shri Krishna Janmashtami. And there are many, many people in this world, first of all, that they don't even accept the concept of God. And very few people actually accept that there is God. And out of those very few people who accept that God, okay, there is God, but God is a person. And there are some who accept that God as a person. They're shocked to hear when we celebrate God's birthday. And then today we tell them that we don't only celebrate God's birthday, we also celebrate his older brother's birthday. And today is that day. So today we are celebrating God's big brother's birthday, that is Balaramji. So what does this mean? So this means that Krishna consciousness is a very personal process. Just like we celebrate birthdays at our home of our family members, parents, children, neighbors sometimes invites us, celebrating the first birthday of their child or the 16th, sweet 16th birthday of their child. So it is all about relationships. And we all derive pleasure from relationships. Similarly, our relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead and his elder brother is very personal. So it proves that God is a person. And we have God's names. We have not only God's names, we have God's parents' names also. And then we have his address also. We know the address of Krishna and Balaram. Where do they stay? Goloka Vrindavan. Do we have their phone number? Yes. What is their phone number? Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. So you're connecting by chanting the Maha Mantra directly to Krishna. And Krishna is listening. So everything about this process is very, very personal. So what we'll do today is, because we have all come together on the day of Balaram Jayanti, we'll recount or remember or recall some of the pastimes of Lord Balaram's. Because most of the time we are speaking about Lord Krishna, yes, but on this day especially, we'll talk a little bit about more. We'll talk about Krishna, but we'll also talk about Lord Balaram, because today is one day that we get to glorify the Supreme Personality of Godhead's elder brother, Lord Balaram. Because so in order for us to purify ourselves, we listen to the pastimes, because we don't have to repeat pastimes for him. It is that we are repeating these pastimes for us, because when we hear them over and over, not only we purify ourselves, but we also increase the pleasure for the devotees who listen to these pastimes. So we'll spend today's time reading from Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. And those who have vedabase.io on your phones, you can pull up. We'll be reading from Adi Lila, chapter 5. And the chapter is The Glories of Lord Nityananda Balaram. And this chapter is essentially describing the nature and glories of Nityananda Prabhu. Lord Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And his first expansion is in the form of Lord Balaram. That is his first expansion. So in the text 1 of chapter 5, it reads, Vande Nanta Bhutasai Swaryam Sri Nityanandam Ishwaram Yashechaya Tat Swarupam Agne Napi Nirupayate. The translation is that, let me offer my obeisances to Lord Sri Nityananda, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, whose opulence is wonderful and unlimited. By his will, even a fool can understand his identity. And in text 2, which is very famous and very favorite of all the devotees, and we can chant all together, Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Ghora Bhakta Vrinda. The translation: all glories to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, all glories to Lord Nityananda, all glories to Advaita Acharya, and all glories to all the devotees of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. We'll read some translations and then we'll speak and discuss some. So in text 4, the translation is, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, is the fountainhead of all incarnations. Lord Balaram is his second body, because he's the first expansion. And Srila Prabhupada writes in the purport that Lord Krishna, the absolute personality of Godhead, is the primeval Lord, the original form of Godhead. And his first expansion is Sri Balaram. The personality of Godhead can expand himself in innumerable forms. The forms that have unlimited potency are called swamsa, and forms that have limited potencies, which is the living entities that are us, are called vibhinnamsa. The text 5, the translation is, these two are one and the same identity. They differ only in form. Lord Balaram is the first bodily expansion of Krishna, and he assists in Lord Krishna's transcendental pastimes. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada writes that Balaram is a swamcha expansion of the Lord, and therefore there is no difference in potency between Krishna and Balaram. The only difference is in their bodily structure. As the first expansion of Godhead, Balaram is the chief deity among the first quadruple forms, and he is the foremost assistant of Sri Krishna in his transcendental activities. So at the beginning of Srimad Bhagavatam, Srila Prabhupada explains the difference between the conception of the absolute truth and the conception of God. In Sanskrit, Ishvara means the controller, but the absolute truth, as defined in Vedanta Sutra and explained in Srimad Bhagavatam, is he from whom everything emanates. Aham sarvasya prabhavo mata sarva pravartate. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita. Someone may be God, creator and controller of entire cosmos, but not necessarily the origin of everything. Krishna says, I am the origin of everything. So the concept of absolute truth goes beyond the concept of God as the controller, because we have many demigods. We have a demigod who controls the rain. Who is that? Lord Indra. Similarly, there are many demigods that have different duties, and they are controlling certain aspect of cosmos, certain aspect around us. But Janmadi Asya Yataha. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Janmadi Asya Yataha. Lord Krishna is the absolute truth. He is the origin of everything, both material and spiritual. And Lord Balaram is the expansion of Lord Krishna. Brahmat Samhita gives us an example that from one candle, you can light a second candle. From the second, you can light the third. From the third, you can light the fourth, and so on and so forth, right? And all have the same candle power. But still, there is only one original candle, right? Similarly, Lord Krishna expands into innumerable plenary portions and portions of plenary portions. But Krishna is the absolute truth, the original personality of Godhead. And Balaram is his first expansion. Yeah. So Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami here and also Srila Prabhupada explained that there is no difference between Krishna and Balaram in their potency. The only difference is their bodily construction. Once in Allahabad, there was a Kumbh Mela, and there was a dispute that took place between two wonderful, wonderful devotees. One of those devotees was Madhudvisa Prabhu, and then he said that there is no difference between Krishna and Balaram. No difference. Anyone has heard this pastime? There is no difference. You've heard? Yes. So he said there is no difference between this, Krishna and Balaram, and the only difference is that Krishna is black and Balaram is white. But Mother Yamuna Devi, she disagreed. She said, no, I don't agree. She said there is another difference. Because Krishna is the only enjoyer of Srimati Radharani, so the two were, they're not the same. So they both were arguing. And His Holiness Tamal Krishna Maharaj was there. And he was at that time Srila Prabhupada's zonal secretary in India. He brought this matter to Srila Prabhupada. He said, Srila Prabhupada, Madhudvisa Prabhu says that only difference between Krishna and Balaram is that one is black and the other is white. And Srila Prabhupada said, he is right. And Tamal Krishna Maharaj said, but Mother Yamuna says that there is another difference. Because Krishna is the only enjoyer of Srimati Radharani, there is a difference between Krishna and Balaram. And Srila Prabhupada said, she is right. And Tamal Krishna Maharaj said, Srila Prabhupada, they are saying different things. How can they both be right? And Srila Prabhupada said, you are right. Then Tamal Krishna Maharaj said, then which is right? Srila Prabhupada said, you decide. So you see, it's one and the same in that sense, but Krishna and Balaram being the first expansion, there's no difference. This is how Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami and Srila Prabhupada has explained. In text 6, the translation is that original Lord Krishna appeared in Navadvip as Lord Chaitanya, and Balaram appeared with him as Lord Nityananda. Actually, there is another incident along the same lines. Srila Prabhupada asked, who is stronger, Krishna or Balaram? Although both have equal potencies as Swamsha, still there may be some difference. So Srila Prabhupada asked, who is stronger? Some of you were here many years ago. I actually was asked to give and speak on the same festival on the same day 3 years ago. And at that time, we had discussed 64 qualities. Usually I put my phone. No, that's not my phone. So we had discussed 64 qualities, transcendental qualities of Krishna. So they both have equal number of qualities. But here, so Srila Prabhupada asked, who is stronger between Krishna and Balaram? And I will ask in the audience the same question. Who is stronger? Can anybody raise the hand and tell me? What do you think? Is Krishna stronger or Balaram? Those who say Balaram, raise your hands. Okay. And those who say Krishna, raise your hands. Okay. And those who think both are equal, raise your hands. Okay. So now those who raise the hands when I ask if Krishna is stronger, raise your hands. Can any one of you tell me why?
He always convinced Balaram.
He always convinced Balaram. Ah, okay. Anybody else? Anybody else? You all raise your hand. This is not like, that multiple choice question in IIT exam that you check a box. I think, it's only two choices. I pick one. You must have thought something. Okay, let's ask who said Balaram is stronger. Why do you think Balaram is stronger?
For me, I always go with Guru.
Always go with Guru. Very nice. Very nice. Wow. Deep. Okay, who else thinks Balaram is stronger? Mohit. Why? Krishna's older brother. Well, he's Krishna's older brother only in Dwapar Yuga and Kali Yuga. We'll talk a little bit more about that, but he was younger too. So do you think that his strength changes from yuga to yuga because he's younger brother in Treta? Really? Okay, we'll come to that. Anybody else? Yes? Krishna's first expansion is Lord Balaram. Okay, so wonderful, insightful answers. And although you all are right in some sense, but that is not what Prabhupada said. Yes, Mahabav.
Maybe one way to think of it is that if you were to see like Krishna as Lord Vishnu and Balaram as Anantashesh, Lord Vishnu, no matter how powerful he is, Anantashesh still can keep him floating over the milk ocean.
Actually, gravitational force comes from Anantashesh, Lord Balaram. Because if you think about it, if you have to lift this chair where I'm sitting along with me, there are some very powerful people like Tejas Prabhu in here, Balshali. He can come and he can lift me along with the chair. But he's standing on the ground. He needs something. Anantashesha is carrying all the universes on his head and he's floating. He doesn't have anything underneath it. So he's very powerful. But that is not the right answer, my friend. I'm sorry. Srila Prabhupada said, Krishna is stronger. But the evidence he gave is different from what anyone here has suggested. The evidence Srila Prabhupada offered does not come from books. Srila Prabhupada explained Krishna is stronger because the deity of Lord Balaram rests his arm on the shoulder of Krishna. Yeah. So when Krishna can take Balaram's weight, who is stronger? Krishna is stronger. Right? How sweet that is. Similarly, if we go in the same chapter, text number 149, the translation is, Lord Nityananda Swarupa formerly appeared as Lakshman and served Lord Ramachandra as his younger brother. And in the purport, Srila Prabhupada writes that among the sannyasis of Shankara Sampradaya, there are different names for brahmacharis. Each sannyasi has some assistants known as brahmacharis, who are called by different names according to the names of the sannyasi. Among such brahmacharis, there are 4 names: Swarupa, Ananda, Prakasha, and Chaitanya. Nityananda Prabhu maintained himself as a brahmachari. He never took sannyas. As a brahmachari, his name was Nityananda Swarupa. And therefore, the sannyasi under whom he was living must have been from the tirthas or the ashramas of Shankara Sampradaya, because one of the names of the assistant brahmachari of such a sannyasi is Swarupa. In text 150, translation, Srila Prabhupada writes, the activities of Lord Ram were full of suffering, but Lakshman, of his own accord, tolerated that suffering. And next text translation, he writes, as a younger brother, he could not stop Lord Ram from his resolution. And so he remained silent, although unhappy in his mind. And in here lies the secret of why Lord Balaram appears as elder brother of Krishna. And just as Krishna took the form of Lord Ramachandra, Balaram took the form of Lakshman. in terms of the cycles of ages, Lord Ramachandra appeared earlier in Treta Yuga, and Lord Krishna appeared later in the Dwapar Yuga. And the pastimes of Lord Ramachandra were full of suffering, especially after getting married. No pun intended, but that's what happened. Ram and Lakshman were the most qualified. They were the most qualified sons of King. What was his name? Dashrath. And everyone wanted and expected Lord Ramachandra to be crowned as the king of Round Rock, Ayodhya. He is king of Round Rock too. It was Baldev Prabhu who said. It was Baldev Prabhu who said Dwarkadish Prabhu. He called Round Rock as Shaligram. Very apt name, a devotional name, a spiritual name. So he was supposed to be crowned as the king of Ayodhya. But what happens at the last moment? Enters the queen, Kaikeyi. And what did she do? She reminded Dashrath of 2 boons that he had promised her. May we request everybody to just scoot up a little bit so those who are joining can find a spot, please. Thank you. So when Dashrath had offered her these boons, Kaikeyi had said she would not take them at that time, but would ask them at an appropriate time later. And then for various reasons, Kaikeyi wanted her son Bharat to become the king instead of Lord Ramachandra. So she asked for these boons now, right? Because Dashrath had given his word to her, he could not say no. He was bound to keep it. She also asked that Lord Ramachandra be sent into exile for how many years? 14 years. Thank you. Who said that? Yes. So now she has asked for these boons, and Ramayana is full of ideals. Yeah, Lord Ram is the ideal king. He's the ideal son. He's the ideal stepson. He's the ideal husband. And Sita is the ideal wife. Lakshman is the ideal brother. So a lot of ideals. They're very hard to follow. I personally love to follow Krishna because Krishna doesn't follow any ideals. So Lord Ramchandra, the ideal son, seeing how distressed his father was, he was obliged to ask him to give up, he was asked to give up his throne and go into forest. And he voluntarily agrees. And he tells his father, I will happily go. Because whatever the father said, son wanted to keep the word of the father. Does not happen often in Kali Yuga. Okay? So, should, but it does not. When Lord Ramchandra decided that he would go, Lakshman declared, no, you cannot go alone. I have to come with you. You cannot go to the forest alone. I have to come there to be with you. And Lord Ram agreed. And then Sita Devi insisted also, I'm your wife. I cannot live without you. I have to go with you in all circumstances. So ultimately, Lord Ramchandra agreed to that too. Okay, you also come. Now, when they three were about to leave, everybody heard about it. Practically everybody in Ayodhya said, we want to come with you. Abhi everybody jayega to Bharat kisko rule karega. So they said, Ramchandra said, no, you all stay. Please stay in Ayodhya, you must stay. And they leave. And in the forest, we have heard so many pastimes, how Lord Ramchandra had to endure so many difficulties. There's actually a very beautiful verse that comes in Srimad Bhagavatam that describes how the lotus feet of Lord Ramachandra were, traversing through the floors of the forest full of stones and pebbles and thorns. And seeing that, Sita Devi would cry, Lakshman would cry. Similarly, the gopis of Vrindavan also used to cry, thinking that the lotus feet of Krishna would be pricked and pierced by the stones and thorns in the Braj Bhumi. And just as the devotees of Krishna consider his pastimes of Vrindavan most relishable because of their sweetness of these pastimes and intimacy, similarly, the devotees of Lord Ramachandra consider his pastimes in the forests to be very, very sweet and relishable part of Ramayana. Yet externally, Lord Ramachandra suffered in the forest. Lakshman was unable to do anything to stop him. And Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami explains very nicely in Chaitanya Charitamrita that everyone from Lord Balaram, the first expansion, down to the other expansions of Krishna, has the sentiment of servitorship to Lord Krishna, being the servant. Even the other expansions of Krishna take pleasure in service of Krishna. Just beautiful. I mean, the concept is not difficult to understand because we in our lives get the most pleasure when we serve others, whether it's our children, it's our spouses, it's our parents, it's our friends, or we do charity in service to others. That gives us satisfactions, gives us pleasure. So the concept comes from spiritual world. It is not something that we as jivas have concocted or created, right? We are following that dharma of servitorship, but we are just not channeling our energies in the right servitorship most of the times. So Lakshman, he could not bear all the suffering seeing Lord Ram like this that he underwent. But because he was a younger brother, he could not stop Lord Ramchandra. There were other instances also in which he was in a very awkward position. When like Ravana was killed, Sita Devi was freed, then Lakshman was obliged or asked to do something very painful. He had to take Sita Devi, and then he didn't want to separate Sita Devi from Lord Ramchandra, but it was an order he was given. So he had to do certain things. And as a younger brother, he had no choice. He had to follow the instruction of his elder brother. So ultimately, because these were very, very painful instances for Lakshman, because they were eventually painful for Sita and Ram, and he couldn't do anything about it being in that position of a younger brother, he vowed that in future he would never, ever take birth as the Supreme Lord's younger brother. Therefore, we see that in Krishna Leela, he appears as the older brother Balaram, and in Gaur Leela, he appears as the older brother Lord Nityananda. So that is the secret of why Lord Balaram always appears as elder brother, except in the Treta Yuga. Now, in text 152, translation is when Lord Krishna appeared, he, Balaram, became his elder brother to serve him to his heart's content and make him enjoy all sorts of happiness. And in the next text, in the translation, it said, Sri Ram and Sri Lakshman, who are plenary portions of Lord Krishna and Lord Balaram respectively, entered into them at the time of Krishna's and Balaram's appearance. And Srila Prabhupada writes in the purport, with reference to the Vishnu Dharmottara, the Laghu Bhagavatamrita explains that Ram is an incarnation of Vasudev. Lakshman is an incarnation of Sankarshan. Bharat is an incarnation of Pradyumna. And Shatrughan is an incarnation of Aniruddha. And the Padma Puran describes that Lord Ramachandra is Narayan, and that Lakshman, Bharat, and Shatrughan are respectively Shesha, Chakra, and Shankha, the conch shell in the hand of Narayan. In the Ram Gita of Skanda Puran, Lakshman, Bharat, and Shatrughan have been described as the triple attendants of Lord Ramchandra. In the next text, it said, Krishna and Balaram present themselves as younger brother and elder brother, but in the scriptures, they are described as the original personality of Godhead and his expansion. And then further on, it said, I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, who by his various plenary portions appears in the world in different forms and incarnations as Lord Ram, but who personally appears in his supreme original form as Lord Krishna. And this comes from, of course, from Brahma Samhita. And then in the next text, it says, the Lord Chaitanya is the same Lord Krishna and Lord Nityananda is Lord Balaram. Lord Nityananda fulfills all of the Lord Chaitanya's desires. Text 157 says, the ocean of the Lord Nityananda's glories is infinite and unfathomable. Only by his mercy can I touch even a drop of it. I'm going to go back a little bit on text 134. So we're at 150, what is it, 157. I'm going to go back to 154. And it says that thus Lord Nityananda has unlimited incarnations. In transcendental emotion, he calls himself a servant of Lord Chaitanya. He's the elder brother. He's calling himself as servant of Lord Chaitanya, who is Krishna. In text 135, it says, sometimes he serves Lord Chaitanya as his guru, sometimes as his friend, and sometimes as his servant, just as Lord Balaram played with Lord Krishna in these three different moods in Braj. So sometimes we see that Lord Balaram serves Lord Chaitanya as his guru, means he serves as the older brother, as a teacher. Lord Balaram, as the older brother of Lord Krishna, was in a position of a teacher. Chaitanya Charan Prabhu said, Balaram, because he's always taken a position of Adi Guru, so he is more Balshali. So absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. That's written here. So he takes the position of a teacher, or as a position of a person in authority for Lord Krishna, and therefore he served the Lord with an element of Vatsalya ras. What does Vatsa mean? Anybody knows what Vatsa means? Calf. Correct. It means a calf, and it also means a dear child. Yeah, a small child, a lovable child. And cow is one of our mothers too. So Vatsalya is the motherly love or a fatherly affection in Vatsalya ras. So as the elder brother is sometimes asked to take care of the younger brother. Mahasundari Mataji was giving examples of elder brother taking care of younger sibling. So Lord Balaram in Vrindavan sometimes serves Lord Krishna in Vatsalya ras. He served as Krishna's guru also. And he sometimes served Krishna as his friend. And in a friend, it's called Sakhya ras. Sakhya ras. So, and then sometimes he's serving him in the mood of Dasya, or a servant, as in a Dasya ras. Lord Nityananda serves Lord Chaitanya in the same three modes. Or sorry, not modes, moods. Same three moods. And in the next text, 136, it is said, playing like a bull, Lord Balaram fights with Krishna head to head, and sometimes Lord Krishna massages the feet of Lord Balaram. Very interesting. Krishna massages the feet of Lord Balaram. Actually, there is a very beautiful painting. I don't know how many of you have seen it, where Lord Balaram is lying down. This painting used to be, in a room where Srila Prabhupada used to stay. Once after Kumbh Mela in 1971, Srila Prabhupada was traveling on a train with his disciples, and a few of them were in the same compartment as Srila Prabhupada. So Srila Prabhupada asked a devotee to read from Krishna book. And the devotee said, should I read from a particular chapter or a particular pastime? And Srila Prabhupada replied, no, it is all nectar. Read from anywhere. So this devotee opened the book, and it happens to be the story of Dhenukasura, the ass demon, the donkey demon, that was killed by Lord Balaram. And at the beginning of the story, the cowherd boys approach Lord Krishna, and they say, we smell such sweet fruits in this Talavan forest, but we cannot enjoy them because there are so many demons there. So when the devotee read this, Srila Prabhupada opened his eyes wide, and he said, just see how the cowherd boys were trying to engage Lord Krishna for their own sense gratification. and after reading some time more, the devotee showed this picture of this pastime. Srila Prabhupada was very pleased, and he said this particular painting that I'm referring to, that the artists have done a great service, and their service will not go in vain. And you will see, years from now, everybody will glorify these paintings. And this was 1971, 50 years ago. Yeah, we're sitting here in Gol Pathar, Shaligram, and talking about it today, 50 years later. So anyway, so it's mentioned here that Krishna sometimes would massage the lotus feet of Lord Balaram as a disciple serves the guru, or as a son serves the father. And going on to the next text, 137, says, he considers himself a servant and knows Krishna to be his master. Thus, he regards himself as a fragment of his plenary portion. So we see even Lord Balaram desires to serve Lord Krishna, considering himself to be so insignificant in comparison. Although he is actually Lord's first expansion, as we discussed earlier, with all the same potencies as Krishna, still he regards himself just as a plenary portion, a fragment of Krishna, which is also called, is a fragment of a fragment of Krishna, is known as Kalara Kala. So, in other words, it's also the mood of humility of Lord Balaram. It's very, very humble. So, when we consider the humility of Lord Balaram, as he is serving, Krishna, it reflects on us. Personally, I feel that we try to act humble. At least I'm speaking for myself. We try to act humble in many situations, and here's the Supreme Personality of Godhead massaging feet of Lord Balaram and vice versa. And what are we in comparison in terms of our own humility? In relation to the cosmos, the description is given in Srimad Bhagavatam of millions and millions of universes that are actually coming from the quadruple expansion that we talked about, a double quadruple expansion of that, and even from their expansion are coming the universes, millions of universes, and in one of those millions of universes is this planetary system, and in this planetary systems, all the planets and stars and moons that are there is one planet called Earth, and on that Earth we're sitting in a country, and in that country, in a state, in a city, in a town, on this seat, and we talk about humility. That's the relation. When Supreme Personality of Godhead can teach us by his own example what humility is, we should learn it. There are many pastimes. We have all heard, many of us have heard the pastimes of Jagai and Madhai. When Lord Nityananda was hit on his forehead, by whom? Madhai. Lord Krishna, Lord Chaitanya wanted to invoke his Sudarshan Chakra and cut off their heads. Lord Nityananda fell at his feet not to do it and give them Krishna Prema. That's humility. If somebody were to hit us with a stone on our head, what will be our reaction? Either we'll be on the floor or we'll be very aggravated to retaliate. But that is not the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In Kali Yuga, they have come to give us Krishna Prema. I'd heard in one of the classes that Lord Nityananda's mercy is higher than Lord Chaitanya's mercy. Why? Can anybody take a guess? Why? Krishna is Patita Pavan. Lord Balaram in Kali Yuga as Nityananda Prabhu is even going beyond that and helping us come up to take Krishna Bhakti. And he, by his own example, shows us that whatever your position might be, in personal life, in work life, don't forget the principles of humility. So, we are insignificant as compared to Lord Balaram. And we should eagerly, with excitement, try to develop the mood, wanting to serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In the next verse, in text 138, it's mentioned, acting just like ordinary boys, they played like roaring bulls as they fought with each other. And they imitated the calls of various animals. And we have heard of many pastimes of Krishna and Balaram in their childhood with cowherd boys. They play just like ordinary friends. That's the Sakya Bhav, Sakya Ras that we talked about. 139 text says, sometimes when Lord Krishna's elder brother, Lord Balaram, felt tired after playing and lay his head on the lap of a cowherd boy, Lord Krishna himself served him by massaging his feet. And in the next text, it says, who is this mystic power and where has she come from? Is she a demigod or demoness? She must be the illusory energy of my master, Lord Krishna. For who else can bewilder me? So, in this purport, Srila Prabhupada writes, the playful pastimes of Lord caused suspicion in the mind of Lord Brahma. And therefore, Lord Brahma, to test Krishna's lordship, stole all the Lord's calves and cowherd boys with his own mystic power. And Sri Krishna responded, however, by replacing all the calves and boys in the field. Now we know this, this pastime of Lord Brahma stealing the cows and cowherd boys. And Lord Brahma was struck by wonder at how all the inhabitants of Vrindavan had so much affection for Krishna. Therefore, to see more of Krishna's glorious pastimes, he stole the cowherd boys. We know that pastime. And he hid them all in a cave. And then Lord Krishna, by his greater mystic power, expanded himself into exact duplicate set of all the cowherd boys and the calves. And for one full complete year, 1 year, these cowherd boys and calves who were actually direct expansions of Krishna, they stayed with the residents of Vrindavan. And at that time, it is said, the residents of Vrindavan, their love for their children, these cowherd boys, their calves, the love of the mother cows just grew multifold. Like everybody was in a bliss. Like, what is happening? Because it's Krishna. It's Krishna in their household. So many unusual events take place actually during that time. And Lord Brahma suspected that something was different. He wasn't sure what it was, but he knew dal mein kuch kala hai. So he thought, how could I be bewildered? How could I be confused? He concluded, it's only Krishna's potencies that can mystify me. So he goes on to glorify Lord Krishna. And then next verse, text 141 said, what is the value of a throne to Lord Krishna? The masters of the various planetary systems accept the dust of his lotus feet on their crowned heads. That dust makes the holy places sacred, and even Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, Lakshmi, and I, myself, who are all portions of his plenary portion, eternally carry that dust on our heads. And Srila Prabhupada writes in the purport, when the Kauravas, to flatter Baladev so that he would become their ally, spoke ill of Sri Krishna, Lord Baladev became very angry. And then, there's a whole purport about this actually in Srimad Bhagavatam in 10th canto. Srila Prabhupada writes beautifully. Srila Prabhupada writes that Kauravas wanted to lure Lord Balaram into their camp against Lord Krishna and his party. So they accused Lord Krishna of being arrogant. And Lord Balaram, being the elder brother, he defended Lord Krishna. He said, what is the value of a throne to Lord Krishna? He doesn't need your throne. He says the masters of so many planetary systems accept the dust from the lotus feet of Krishna to be placed on their heads. So what is the value of this throne to Krishna? Lord Balaram himself, he himself declares to be Kala Kalaya, the portion of a portion. Although he's a direct expansion, the first expansion, but he is so humble that he himself considers himself to be the fragment of a fragment of Lord Krishna. And Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami also writes similarly in this verse, the original verse in Chaitanya Charitamrita. He calls it, as I said earlier, the Kalara Kala. So we see the humility of Lord Balaram. Kauravas actually just tried to create division. They were expert politicians. And that is the job Politicians' job is to divide. We see what is going on around us in our country. They divide people for their own personal benefit. So, because they know when they divide people, then they have a better chance of succeeding, because now they have made both the parties weaker. That is what politics is all about. So Srila Prabhupada actually also mentioned that the only thing that can destroy our movement, our ISKCON, is fighting amongst ourselves. He said nothing can destroy us from outside. Nothing can decide. And here we see how Lord Balaram himself, how faithful he was to Krishna. So sometimes we might hear, somebody speaking ill about us, about others in front of us. But if we agree with them, then we are participating in the same ill behavior. If we go along with the same criticism that we are hearing, especially in absence of that person, then that who is being criticized, without any intention to help that person, then we are taking part in that activity of weakening ourselves, weakening our own movement, and weakening Srila Prabhupada's mission. So Srila Prabhupada often quoted this, that there is strength in unity. And he also cited many stories. There was a father, and we've heard this story growing up. He gives a stick to his children, asks them to break it. They break it. Then he keeps on increasing the sticks together. And then he asks the children to break it. And it keeps getting harder and harder and harder. And over a period of time, they cannot break it. So Srila Prabhupada demonstrated that if you stay together, nobody can defeat you. But if you're alone, you'll be defeated at every moment. You'll be broken at every moment. So he wanted all of us as a family, one family across the globe, to be united in the mission of spreading the glories of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. There's another story. I don't know if we have time for it. How much time we have? About 10 minutes. Okay. So there's another story Srila Prabhupada used to quote. So there was one time there was a father who was sick, and he had 4 sons, and one son was, all 4 were around him. And one son was, massaging the head of the father. One was massaging the feet of the father. One was massaging the right arm, another one the left arm. And while doing so, they started arguing with each other that I want to massage the head, I want to massage the feet, I want to massage the right arm, I want to massage the left arm. And seeing, now that, it kind of became a conflict. So they got so absorbed in fighting with each other that who was going to massage which part of the father's body, that the father died. So Srila Prabhupada concluded that you should, all of us, cooperate in service of your father. And don't become so absorbed in fighting about who is going to do what service that you forget the father altogether. There's a message here, right? Now here is Lord Balaram, right? It's a great example for us to follow. How to be humble, how to be faithful, how to be fearless. He wasn't afraid to express his devotion to Krishna. He wasn't afraid to proclaim the glories of Krishna to even Krishna's enemies. So we can learn from Lord Balaram. There's another story that comes to mind in Chowpatty. I don't know, Prabhu, you might have heard this. There was a devotee, brahmachari, and he was very thin, probably weighed less than 100 pounds. And he used to go on book distribution. So one time he was in this Mumbai Central train, and he was doing book distribution. Some argument happened, and he got into, somebody said something against, Srila Prabhupada and Lord Krishna and Lord Balaram. And it got so heated. He came back and he told the story to other brahmacharis. He said, I almost threw this person who was arguing with me outside the train. And everybody was like, wow, you were fearless. Bravo. You defended Krishna. You defended Lord Balaram, Nityananda. And, you did a great job. Now, in that moment, when he described this pastime, like this incident that happened, everybody was great. Now, everybody went away. But then we have some very super intelligent people in Radha Gopinath Mandir. So there is one of them is Shikshashakam Prabhu. And he said, story is good, but it is too good. Look at him. How could he be almost about to throw somebody holding by his neck outside the train? If a wind blows, this guy will fly with it. So he said, I gotta find out ki mamla kya hai. So he goes to him when everybody has left. And he goes, so amazing. What a glorious incident you defended. You defended our movement. You defended Lord Krishna. You didn't hear anything against Lord Krishna. But how did you do it? He goes, Prabhu, he was being, saying things and I didn't like it. I just held him from his, collar. And I said, if you don't stop, I'm going to throw you out of the train. And then he stopped and he backed off. He goes, yes, but who was this person? How did you do it? And he goes, he looked around. He goes, Shikshashtakam Prabhu goes to this brahmachari that, look at you, you're like so thin, you're so frail, you don't have any strength. He goes, but Lord Balaram gave me strength. He goes, yeah, samajhta hai baba, but how did you do it? He goes, he looked around, nobody was there. He goes, this guy was even more thinner than I am. So I had an upper hand, plus Lord Balaram's strength was with me. So, kind of a joke, but in the same sense, we drive strength from Lord Balaram. It's Bal Ram. Bal is strength. Ram is pleasure, all pleasure. So all pleasure comes from the Balshali Balaram. Yeah. So we should be fearless like that, defending our culture, defending our values. We are not talking about mythology. When somebody, I have heard this so many times. Somebody talks about, this is Hindu mythology. These are scriptures are Hindu mythology on TVs, on conversations with neighbors and everything. This is not mythology. This is history. This is not mythology. So we should not feel that we cannot with confidence talk about our own culture. We can. And then another one of the verses that explain that how Lord Krishna, as I mentioned earlier, massaged the feet of Lord Balaram. And then the following one explains how Lord Balaram considers Lord Krishna his master. So we can have similar sentiments in our association with each other also, because we too are brothers and sisters. Yeah. So we can, when Prabhupada, said that we should address each other as Prabhu, it was not because Prabhu means just a word that we should call each other with. Prabhu actually means master. We call each other masters. Why? Because our mindset needs to be of that we are the servant of each other. So I have seen many times, even with Srila Prabhupada, in Srila Prabhupada's times, many disciples of Srila Prabhupada used to travel with him. And when they would travel with him, there would be, there are other disciples and servants that are serving them. But not only serving Srila Prabhupada, they're also serving, the other entourage, which was traveling with Srila Prabhupada. Why? Because servant of the servant principle is not just a principle, it is an action by our action to serve others. So servant of servant is not just a principle, it is an action to serve others, not just by calling Prabhu, but really feeling it, internalizing it, and treating each other with respect, treating each other really as you are my master and how I can serve you. Once in Mayapur, just after Srila Prabhupada had finished taking prasad, he heard some shouting from the next room. He sent Harisori Prabhu to the next room to see what is going on, why there was so much noise coming out of the next room. And Harisori Prabhu came back and he said, Srila Prabhupada, your two secretaries are arguing. Srila Prabhupada said, call them please. So they called. So Srila Prabhupada said, what is the difficulty? And then one secretary replied, Srila Prabhupada, I am sick. The only food I can really eat is your remnants. So I want your remnants. The other secretary countered and he said, Srila Prabhupada, I feel every disciple who is here should get some of your remnants. We should not just give it to one person, it should be equally distributed to everybody. Srila Prabhupada said, he is sick. And if all he can eat and digest is my remnants, then you should give him my remnants. Srila Prabhupada explained it is not enough just to be the servant of spiritual master. We must also be the servant of other servants of spiritual master. And not just one spiritual master, any spiritual master. So let's develop that mood of being servant of the servant. Then we can make wonderful advancement. So I think we have run out of time. I will pause here, and I would have loved to continue with a couple more Srila Prabhupada's pastimes, which are beautiful examples of Lord Nityananda's mercy. The one that comes to mind is in Mayapur. Actually, I'll finish with this, if I recall correctly. In Mayapur, where the TOVP is being built, the largest temple on the planet is being built. In those days, we didn't have the land, and the devotees were very stressed that we're not getting the land to build the temple, where the Mayapur temple is. Srila Prabhupada actually said, pray to Lord Balaram. Pray to Lord Balaram. And this devotee, next day or next night, had a dream. And Lord Balaram came in his dream and said to do certain things and you will get the land. And 10 days later, we get the land. So you see that Lord Balaram's mercy, coming directly from Srila Prabhupada's lotus lips, to pray to Lord Balaram is unfathomable. So with that, I will stop. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.